Observation 1 is a resolutional analysis plan is a resolution that the People's Republic of China should create or alter a policy to significantly reduce its domestic greenhouse gas emissions. Based on framework, we believe this not should be weighed the net benefits looking at the cost of the plan versus the opportunity cost of the plan through the lens of a policymaker. Observation 2 is the inherency of the first argument is that over the next 40 years there's going to be an increased number of people in the world, but we have to continue to increase our food production with a decreased impact on the environment. The second argument is that greenhouse gases are an inevitable part of food production, so decreasing them is always going to be key. Thus, the plan. The People's Republic of China should create a policy to significantly reduce its greenhouse gas emissions by fully funding the development of biogas digesters on all animal feeding operations, by fully funding and mandating, add the word mandating, the development of biogas digesters on all animal feeding operations, funding enforcement of normal means. Observation 3 is the solvency. The first argument is that biogas digesters are always going to be critical in bamboo modern farming. They are meeting 1/3 of their energy needs with the digesters alone. The second argument is that China is always going to be critical. They are the second largest contributor of being greenhouse gas emissions, and they are the first largest farm output in the world. The third argument is that this impact is always going to mean that centralized farming in China increases the risk of agri-terrorism, which is why small farming is going to be good and preferable with the biogas digesters. On advantage 1, global warming. IS uniqueness meat and dairy farming in China are the second largest cause of greenhouse gas emissions. The ACE point is that waste is produced so rapidly on the farms that it's hard to treat in a sufficient way. The first argument is that in 2012, there were about 15 million cows in China that produced 29 trillion tons of fluid waste per year per cow. The ACE point to this argument is that in taxing in the countryside rents that the manure piles up like mountains and that there's absolutely no benefit for the local individuals. The BASIC point is that methane is 23 times worse than carbon dioxide for the environment and always leads to global warming faster. The second argument is that cows and other animals release CO2 and methane in massive amounts. The ACE point of this argument is that the United Nations report found that livestock make up 14.5% of carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous dioxide, and fluorinated gases. The BASIC point of this the uniqueness is that the Huishan dairy only uses 1/2 of their biogas, is using 1/2 of the biogas digesters and is able to produce enough energy for their like 1/3 of their dairy needs. The CISA point on the uniqueness is that without intervention, this problem is going to continue to increase more quickly than it's going to be able to be solved. The first argument is that the dairy industry has increased 12% since 2000 in China. The ACE point is that there's been an increased demand for calcium and an increased amount of wealth is leading to more like meat and dairy food options. B is the link. Conversion of manure into energy is going to decrease emissions and is going to provide long-term solutions to fossil fuel use. The ACE point is that the biodigester technology is ready to expand right now. The plan is going to cover up the startup costs, which is the most important aspect of the biodigesters. The first argument is that the operational and maintenance costs are low. They only make up about 2.3 to 7% of the cost. The BASIC point is the length. Is the next argument. The plan immediately decreases emissions in long-term biogas fuel use. The first argument is that dairy manure is about 80% water and 15% solids. About 91% of these solids are volatile, meaning that 20 to 30% of it can be converted into biogas. The CISA point on the links is that the plan is going to make China a leader in this energy. The first argument is that the United States is ready to expand their energy right now. You can look to the Huckabee Micro-G pipeline in Texas, which is pumping gas to PG&E in California to provide for their power lines. The second argument is, however, that there's only 1% of farms in the United States are using biodigesters and only 0.02% of European farms are using them. Next, internally. Greenhouse gas reduction is going to be critical to check back global warming. The ACE point is that China's agricultural sector it would also be able to produce tons of fertilizer and gallons of gasoline, which is going to be preferable for the environment. The first argument is that CP Group subsidiaries alone estimates that they would be able to produce 22,000 tons of fertilizer on their farms. The BASIC point is that a standard digester would be able to produce 20 gallons of gas per day. The first argument is that this cost means that at 0.06 cost per kilowatt, the price of heat being $5.50 per gigajoule, this would save over $7,000 annually in electric fees and over $3,000 in gas. The impact is that rising temperature is always going to lead to the effects of global warming. The ACE point to this argument is that biodiversity loss has a compounding effect, which means that we can always go to mass extinction. The first argument is that without intervention, there will definitely be a mass extinction in 240 years. The ACE point is that ocean acidification is continuing to decrease the number of coral as well as their structural integrity. The BASIC point is that the current Holocene extinction event, which is what we're coming up towards, is the largest and the only human cause. The ACE point is that Daniel Rothman from MIT Tech at Lorenz Center says that 310 gigatons of carbon dioxide added in the next 70 years would be enough to push us to the brink of extinction. Advantage 2, small farms. As the uniqueness, China has historically had small farms, but they are moving towards a larger scale right now. The ACE point is that the economic incentive for youth is continuing to move them towards the city. The first argument is that there have been 3 dairy companies in China right now. They're making up 60% of the market since 2012. The ACE point is that the government decisions in the past have specifically clapped small farms in their market. The first argument is that a 2008 formula scandal accused small farms of altering their milk chemically to make more protein. The China to see. This magnifies the problems of the growing industry. The first argument is that by 2050, 64 to 75%, there will be a 64 to 76% increase in consumption. The second argument is that this is literally way bigger than anything going on in the United States, like California. These farms are huge. The B is the link. The monetary gains for credit and credibility are going to be critical to small farms. The ACE point is that biogas digesters are absolutely key to small farms. The first argument is that they can sell or use the fuel. And the ACE point is that in World War II, there were 30 biogas digesters that serviced German farm tractors when they had no access to other forms of electricity. The BASIC point is that they're also being used in India for cooking in homes. The second argument is that fertilizer also can be sold at a 13% markup, which is immediate profits for the farms. The BASIC point is that the plan is always going to reinvigorate confidence in small farms because it allows for the government to distribute this technology not just to large farms, which flips the script on their previous stance on the small farms. The C is that this is always going to spill over into research and development, which is critical to developing nations. Our argument is that small local development is always going to be better for sustainability. The internal link and impacts. Large farms are going to decrease food sustainability and pave the way for food-borne bioterrorism. The ACE point of this argument is that larger farms always risk an ability to attack the food with vulnerable disease outbreaks. The next argument is that 12 plants and 5 animals make up 75% of the world's foods, which makes us particularly vulnerable to disaster or disease. The next is the impacts. We say that China is agri-terrorism would ultimately lead to economic collapse. The ACE point of this argument is that China makes up $13 trillion of the global economy and is critical to a number of national food aid. Without this type of security, there's always going to be the risk of a complete economic collapse, which risks war, and we all know that war leads to nuclear war because countries get really desperate, and that's the only thing they can do is fire off nuclear weapons.
Can we get a copy of the fine text? Why does the plan spill up?
So China is obviously, like we said, in the uniqueness of a global agricultural leader, but also they're expanding their farms into areas like Mozambique. They've actually purchased land there, and so the other farmers are also modeling after China because they're involved there.
What's the net benefit?
The cost versus the opportunity cost of the plan.
It's one off and then the half. Okie doke. Is anybody not ready? First is the framework. The first term is the effort of the allied slave trade would create the conditions of the production of the economic regimes in East Asia. The East point the Indian Ocean slave trade was the facilitation of the ways in which bodies would be exported to East Asia would determine the ability for nation building to exist within the region. But the peace points the effects of colonization and anti-blacks would also determine the ways in which there are current geopolitical relations with the region, e.g. Nepal, Taiwan, and India, and the Indian-Pakistan conflict. The links. The first argument is the affirmative is the stabilization of global whiteness. The ace points the affirmative isolates a problem that is endemic to the regime with the piece of points that indicates the need to stabilize the problem, because otherwise the global regime will collapse. Vis-a-vis the impacts of the piece of points that always presumes that the world is sent off is saved, which locks the modalities of whiteness, e.g. the idea that you always have a white civil society over no society. But the second argument is climate change policies. The ace point is that climate change policies are always historically ones that always disenfranchise minorities in the status quo. The piece of points that's because the ways in which if you look at the ways in which nuclear policy is historically passed, it's always one that first focuses on resolving global climate change issues, but the side effects and the negative components of the plan get pushed off in other ways. But the point that the ways in which digestion works indicates that there has to be some reservoir location which the digestion go indicates that probably links. But the third aim was Chinese environmental policy, specifically the ace point since the election of President Trump. Chinese environmental policy has always been one position with soft power. The piece points that she pushed hard, indicating that China wants to become a global leader in environmental policy. Realized the 6 points indicates the affirmative she's playing into global geopolitics, in which two components of the global norms are fighting against each other to try to reinsert forms of whiteness. With the 6 points, this always creates a masking effect of the ways in which whiteness is able to exist itself. The affirmative is just an extension of neoliberal dominance. But the fourth argument is neoliberalism. The ace of points that the affirmative is an extension of the ways in which the global foreign practices must happen. The piece of points that the affirmative attempts to impose norms, e.g. the ways in which other forms of agriculture ought to happen. Real large, these are the spill apart. The 6 point is that this always presumes that there is a normative method in even real large. But the piece of points is culminates in anti-blackness because the ways in which agricultural policies specifically target black bodies, specifically target black bodies because agriculture is always linked to the productivity of the black body. Real large, but the east points being indicated, that means the affirmative is always a way to imposition in ways in which other bodies often facilitate real large. But the impacts, the first impact is deviance. The ace point is that anti-blackness goes to the world in a black-white continuum, which whiteness is an ontologically stable categorical position, and everything else is pushed off to the periphery. The piece of points this creates forms of deviance which you're always able to isolate someone as the other, which causes us to secure as created infinite violence against others. But the C points is also culminates in gratuitous violence against the black body, because the black body is always deemed as deviant, indicates that the extinction of the black body is inevitable in this task, but also that extinction scales up in a world of the app, and the Keystone will solve the app. But also means the criticism turns that way. So the second impact is maximum captivity. The ace point. Actually, I don't want that impact. An alternative. Vote negative to finally bring about the end of the world. Vote negative to finally bring about the end of the world. The first argument solves the ace points. The affirmative solves backlash is already known unique against the black body. So it's not a question of whether the black body will die, but a question of when, where, and how. But the beast points, the affirmative is the relocation of the ways in which power is able to function. The oppressor attacks the oppressed as opposed to right versus the C points. This creates a total negation of the system that allows the possibility of black future. The decent points that is try or die for the alternative. Because systems of anti-black starting to permeate the world real large, which means that there's only the risk of the alternative as far as starting to make the world better. But the second argument is that the alternative solves the app. The ace point is the ace of points is that the need to have constant expansion to be able to combat other nations and modality of whiteness is part of the reason why trans environmental policies have been so problematic in the status with the peace points we indicate in the world. We indicate any of the world is also able to resolve the systemic risk and impacts of the affirmative indicates we solve the third argument is no permutation. The ace points is any link to the affirmative is a disadvantage to the permutation. When include whiteness with the peace points, there's no risk of permutation because the alternative solves 100% of the F. First, the plan doesn't solve warming. The first argument is trans already hit their equal limits. The ace points that means that there's really no more land for them to be able to produce on the status with the beast points that the growing population trying to indicate they're always going to expand agricultural policies upwards. The C subpoints that even if biogas digestion is effective and able to work, isn't able to solve for the massive amount of people in China in the status quo indicates that other forms of pollution are always going to overtake China in the status quo. The second argument is you don't alter China's environmental policies. The ace points that means China's whole is going to lead to pollution within the region. The beast points Beijing is one of the most polluted cities in the world, indicates that pollution is inevitable within China in the status quo. The C points that means that minorities and poor individuals that are forced to live closest to forms of production forms of emissions are always the ones that are going to be the most hurt. Indicates the affirmative always culminates in environmental racism in which they have solved for warming because they have solved for structural questions of food supply wall, nor in the ways in which the affirmative continues to perpetuate policies against these individuals. But on bench specifically, you indicate the global first you indicate the cows are part of the problem. The first argument indicate that first argument is that we indicate that biogas doesn't get spread over to other countries. Biogas digestion doesn't spread up the ace of ways that Trump always backlashes the plan. He always backlashes the plan. The piece of ways that Trump wouldn't want to proceed. Wouldn't want to let Xi posture himself as having effective or control over the United States policy. And that he would probably find ways to subsidize the United States production. So cows will still be able to function. The next term is fish farming. It means the impacts of the African the ace of ways that fish farming is a process through which massive nets are dragged through the ocean, which massively decreases fish stocks. The piece of ways that fish stocks in this task force are estimated to be depleted by 2022. Indicates you're not able to solve your food war. Indicates you're not able to solve your food war impact. Indicates the app is not unique to the next argument. Solvency. Additionally, there's no modeling for China. The ace of ways that China doesn't model other countries. If this was the case, other countries would have feed-in tariffs for renewable energy because that's probably a hot process that China has in the status quo. The piece of ways that China's economic model isn't able to be exploited because of the degree to which the Chinese government controls the Chinese economy. Indicates there's no effective way to model the affirmative large. The next argument is that China likes to sequester their technology. They don't like to share technology. To other nations. This is evidenced by the fact that they appropriate other nations' nuclear technology while not sharing their large. Probably indicates they don't want to give out their biogas digesters because part of the regime of soft power is one in which they're able to control the access to technology. Indicates they don't solve, but it should indicate the cows are not the root cause of warming. To reason the first argument, we indicate things such as international cargo shipping means that so much oil is burned every day that it is able to overcome the amount of methane that's created by cows. Indicates you're not able to solve the affirmative. Indicates you're not able to solve the affirmative. Indicates you're not able to solve the affirmative. The next argument is the next argument is that warming. The next argument is that warming is good. The ace of points, the production of SO2, the production and capture of SO2 in the atmosphere is changing. Agricultural belts of these points is unique. The key for resulting in Indo-Pakistan conflict. The season points that's because SO2 is able to increase the production and the livelihood of a crop called winter wheat. But the diesel points that winter wheat is unique. The key to the Pakistani economy because in the winter times it's one of the only affordable grains they're able to have access to. The east points that current tensions with India and Pakistan and the status quo means that in a world which you start to reduce warming, you necessarily trade off the agricultural yields of Pakistan. Indicates that it should trigger food war impact. Indicates you're able to solve the affirmative dash 2. First, we indicate that the status quo solves this advantage. The ace points the United Nations, this humanitarian goals to give food aid across the country. But the piece points the genetic creation of other food indicates that we don't need to be able to necessarily have crop farm, e.g., or able to grow proteins and other things in the labs. And the status quo indicates that they do. Indicates you're still able to. Indicates that food stocks should solve the status quo. The next argument indicates that small farms get thumped by the small farms do not consult with the ace of points that the only reason small farms are competitive in the status quo is because of more effective ecological practices. But the piece points in the world which biogas digestion is used for large. No reason to prefer small farms. The ace of points that China always thumps small farms because of the ways in which the government controls the economy. Indicates that money is always going to give individuals that are more productive. Indicates that the structure of the Chinese economy thumps small farms. The next argument indicates the country, however, regions such as Monsanto always thump small farms because small farms can't respond to lawsuits that Monsanto files against them when they use genetic crops that they. When they genetically modify crops in the fourth argument, genetically modify crops is the only way to have effective food supplies in the status quo. Indicates that small farms are not able to be solved by advanced. Indicates you don't solve advanced. Additionally, indicates the collapse of food. Yeah, that's fine.
What's the status of the all?
Unconditional.
So, when you say violently bring about the end of the world, like, what does that look like?
If they're shooting me in the head.
Yeah, something like that. Violently. And
Do you have a gun?
I mean,
Like, are we
if I
doing this
told you,
here?
that would be probably pretty questionable since white people don't like black people with guns. But also, probably, but I don't want to necessarily.
Do white people like black people with guns in your ult?
Does just Max dying end the world?
No.
The
But
alternative is not a metaphor. We indicate that there should be a violent insurrection against concepts and structures of whiteness, which
How do you
would follow
guarantee
them.
anyone participates in that?
How do we guarantee that one participates in what?
How do you guarantee anyone participates in that?
The same way you guarantee that the app happens?
You fiat your ult?
Yeah.
that problem.
Unless you haven't fiated the app, in which case we do not fiat the alt. we will claim the same silencing mechanism that you are using to determine if China will change its policy.
Alright, order is going to be same order. Yeah, I think that'll be fine.
So criticism in order, after order?
Yeah. Good. On the first, it's going to be their indication as to why YouTube Black is going to be the root cause for all of these violence. It's going to be wrong. The fact that China literally had performed slavery 33,000 years before there's any before there are any records as to African individuals actually being in the continent age is going to be a reason as to why there was violence occurring prior to that. You'll probably reason as to why there are alternative reasons for why violence occurs besides the method of anti Black is why these parts are hopefully not going to be able to resolve for all that. But also we're going to say that you can only send across here. We say that you should vote for the policy option to save most lives. We say that this provides the best indication of how we are able to better resolve for these forms of violence and also resolve for the issue of exportation. That should be able to change policy, be able to resolve for that is the only way we can actually be able to resolve rights of society. Because otherwise, if you prop yourself up, because that has access to more resources than any revolution that you'd be able to have in case of reasons why you almost fail. Links. First, I say that we are stabilization. We attempt to be able to isolate the problem and that there's a global class where we're going to indicate the reasons why the system is already going to be stable and status quo. No reasons why you'd be able to necessarily make it unstable. We say there are already indications why there are resistance moves all across the world and be able to break away from isolated society. Indicates the reason as to why there is and why these are ultimately failing. I.e., that the fact that we just label any group that we don't like as terrorists, be able to justify any form of war against them. The fact that we literally were able to take out the last group ISIS is going to be reasons why white civil society is already inherently stable and status quo. So it's just an issue of whether or not we are able to take non-Western hedge funds to be able to allow them to be able to conflict that creates a better application for that. In case of reasons why us increasing China hegemony allows for a conflict against the United States, which only makes it easier for us to be able to break down those powers in the first place in the world in which they fight each other. We make it more easy for your aggressors to be able to conflict them in the first place. Because otherwise, countries like the U.S. and China working together in order to be able to combat these sorts of organizations really makes it more effective for us to be able to prevent that. But also, they say climate change. First, we're going to say that climate policy is going to be the ability to resolve these extent across why it leads to the extinction of everybody. In case of reasons why the show always comes first. There arguments about nuclear policy don't even apply. They absolutely no warrants as to why biodiversity are key. They say that they just have to pick a location where that is. It's literally on the farms already. We just prevent that waste from actually being able to get outside the farm in the first place. Probably the reason why we actually resolve for all of those impacts. You can understand across all the arguments as to how there are people of color near these farms that get hurt in status quo, but we prevent that waste from actually going outside. In case of reasons why we resolve them. But also extend across the turn as to why we increase small farms. We only create the propensity for marginalized population be able to actually have more economic liberty and for themselves, which allows them to be able to more effectively fight the revolution in the world when they have more resources. But also, we said that having food is going to be a part question to be able to fight this in a world in which people are dead. They literally are not going to be able to fight. They don't have the serotonin in their brain to be able to actually have the forms of critical thought to effectively combat powers. But also, they say soft power. We're going to say that soft power is always going to be inevitable. Either it's just an issue of the U.S. or China. They you want to say across reasons. That's why they say, okay, so why the U.S. is going to be uniquely bad. We say that in a world in which China and the U.S. are ultimately conflicting over this allows for a better breaking down white. Also, they give no indication as to why China is uniquely bad. We say that you wrapping up China in this is the same way in which we ignore the violence that occurs against the Asian bodies, and that's going to be able to say that they are a motor minority, which only excludes the amount of history and colonialism they've been enacted against them, which is the reason that's why we should be able to see them as uniquely effective. Also, say neoliberalism. We say that China is one is a neoliberal because they want to be able to focus on things like more centralized markets rather than being able to rely on a free market. Give me a reason as to why they resolve this. Also, we're going to say that China is actually one of the few countries that is economically growing and actually being able to decrease poverty and status quo over the U.S., which has been stabilized since the 1970s. It's going to be a reason as to why China is going to be uniquely better be able to actually create a better economy, but also resolves for these issues in the future, especially in a world in which we allow for better spillover. Send across that the current markets only allow for destruction of farms throughout Africa because the amount of aid that the U.S. gives doesn't actually find ways to be able to increase their energy or productivity. Impacts. They say deviance, first we're going to say alternative reasons for deviance are going to be that disableism, i.e. that we always see reasons why we're able to justify black people being uniquely inferior to white people. First of all was through the biological determination, say that they had smaller skulls or things like this is going to be a justification for why they created deviance in the first place, and kids reasons to resolve for. They stigmatizing black isn't going to be able to resolve for all of it, but also it's going to be a reason why you only allow for new forms of deviance in a world which you target the Chinese populations uniquely. That for black individuals is going to be reasons why you only create more violence in the future.
Herb, do the plan and violently bring about the end of the world. Do the plan and violently bring about the end of the world. First, give me the permutation, the double line are the alternatives wrong to be able to overcome the individual instances of the after, so we can be able to overcome the status quo. They don't read any frameworks about ethics and kids. The reason as to why, if they are right that the revolution is going to be so effective, means that you never solve. Also, we're going to say that the revolution never actually resolves in a world in which the U.S. already has access to more military power, and China would never want to be able to collapse their system. Indicates the reason is just an issue of how we make it more inclusive system in the first place. They give no actual indication as to where these sorts of conflicts have been effective in the past. We would indicate the fact that the black community's role to be killed out by the FBI are only giving the indication as to why this will be taken out. They say that also the entirety of the affirmative first always absolutely no, you would always be able to justify killing Chinese populations, be a justification for new attacks to racism in the future, always allow for more violence, but also they say that any link to the act is going to be this, that we absolutely not sure in a world in which they all just utilize this fiat means that you don't get access to that argument. Also, they don't have any reason why they also have the app because you don't provide anything for farms. On top case. They say we can't solve ecological warming because there's
Can you do it like a dissent to bringing about the end of the world? Because that's probably not a good thing. Perm is just a test of competition.
Yeah. Next dissent to this is going to be that what dissent do you want?
Just like bringing about the end of the world is bad violently. We don't
Bringing
want
about the end of the world violently is always going to be bad. It's just an issue of being able to provide effective resources for the way in which people are actually able to live in the world. Indicates the reason to why you always lead to nihilist understandings of the world always lead to things like self-hate in the first place, and always leads to resulting from that people realize that they are never able to effectively change anything in the real world. Always leads to like massive amounts of depression and dehumanization, which is always bad. Now on the case. They say that there's not going to be an increase in land for, so we're going to say that we decrease the need to be able to increase land in the world so we can utilize our farmland for also energy. In case of reasons why we decrease the amount of land that we actually need. They say digesters don't work because because of other pollutants. We say that in a world which we increase energy is able to resolve that, but also China's resolving for specific types of pollutants, i.e. they have new regulations of their diesel trucks which are actually able to decrease the emissions in Beijing. Specifically indicates the reason. That's just how we solve in the rural areas and water emissions as of right now, but also you can't flow, and if you can't flow any of Max's arguments on case, you should not let Ficker extrapolate on them in the MG. We cleared Max like 7 times across multiple people. Can be a reason as to why you should always give us more flex on this. But also, they say that this will always be closer to people, and that there are structural reasons for people not getting food supply. They stand across reasons why China's can be able to provide food aid internationally. Reasons why this is going to be key. But also, they say we are at ecological limit. Yeah, already resolved the wind stuff. And one. They say digesters, they say Trump would ultimately backlash. Absolutely no warrant as to why that's not why that's true. Also, we say non-unique because Trump is already having a trigger warrant that's so in case no reason why that's true. But also, we say impact turn that if Trump wanted to be able to increase subsidies on these type of farming, it's only going to be uniquely good because the results for the environmental racism in the United States. They say fish supplies first. So we're going to say the fact that the waste goes into the water is a reason as to why it destroys fish in the first place. Also, a reason as to why we have to internally provide new types of food. No, we say we can backfill protein from fish with meat, which results in me with somebody that checks that back. They say modeling will happen because China will be able to exploit other economies to extend across why the U.S. is going to be uniquely better because they lead to $356 million lost, but China's uniquely better because they actually provide the infrastructure that is more stable long term. Means that that's better. Thanks for the argument, James. But also they say China steals things like news for itself. We're going to say the fact that they literally provide this infrastructure and the technology has existed since World War II means that no one needs to steal it from China. It's all known. But also they say all warming is good because the result of Pakistan conflict. We say alternative reasons to things like religious war can be a reason as to why they always want to be able to have this conflict. But also we say that we say that warming only increases conflict in the world, which has leads to a lack of water in the Middle East. So can be a reason why we have to be able to resolve warming in these areas. But also, yeah. Do you want anything else on the warming did?
Just remember their argument about the individuals, minorities being suffering now is the reason we get the perm debate.
Yeah, individual minorities suffering right now is the reason why we get perm debate. It's an issue of how we are able to resolve for past the status quo in the interim. But on eventual, all they say here is that the UN increases food aid. Absolutely not true in a world in which Chinese provided. They say protein labs. Absolutely not true in a world which we literally we are like 40 years away from being able to produce that on large scale. Most of it's poisonous anyways.
It'll be the app in order, then the criticism, starting with the alt solvency, then the with the permutation stuff on top of that, and then the framework link impact. Right? Is anyone all right? There's not enough game to be able to prove the affirmative has any form of solvency that could be able to prove that it is necessary risk to be able to have more forms of environmental racism and structural violence. First, you just conceded that the population would overwhelm the ability to be able to have land for energy to be able to keep up. This means that any ability to be able to test pollutants would not be enough to be able to resolve for the overwhelming amount of population that would necessarily increase, especially in a world where you've already conceded that there's already growing towards that trend, which probably means there's no way to be able to resolve. You've also said that we can't be able to extrapolate on arguments. Unfortunately, this is a constructive speech, and I can be able to understand or make arguments, especially extending arguments that existed inside of the LOC. Also, you've conceded the environmental policy argument is always going to produce more pollution against minority populations. Your only argument is that you could be able to resolve environmental racism in a world where she has control to be able to resolve for that. But I'll get to that specifically why the politics argument won't be able to resolve for this question. But also, you just conceded that it is always going to increase the amount of structural colonialism that is going to be existing inside of China, as well as being able to spill up into other nations. Which probably means that one, if you spill up, that probably means you exist into other nations, including Africa, which probably replicates the amount of colonialism that you have. Or it just means you don't have solvency for your affirmative, which means there's always going to be waste dumping in other places you can't be able to resolve. But also, on the modeling argument, on solvency, your only argument is that the tech is already known, which means there's no way to resolve. However, you've conceded that even if the technology is known, the technology that is used, the understanding of the technology being known, you conceded that the technology cannot be shared, which means that there is no implication in a world where we are able to increase the amount of R&D that necessarily exists, which is an argument that is made in the PMC, means that there is always going to be more technology that is created that is not going to be shared, especially in the empirical context of the ways in which that China understands environmental framework, which probably means there's no there's no spill up, that means there's no solvency of the colonization and infrastructure ways in which they posture themselves in Africa, which probably replicates all the violence that's happening structurally in the world of the alternative, but also probably means you've conceded the expansionism argument is the reason why the colonization needs to be changed in the first place, which probably means there's no game for the alternative. Also, you just conceded that cows are not the root cause of the inherency of the affirmative, which probably means there's no reason as to why it's inherent to be able to resolve the implication of these specific greenhouse gases, which means that you've just not resolved any other argument on the advantage one. The only argument I need here is that warming is necessarily inevitable. The only argument is that you said is warming increases conflict. However, that doesn't resolve the implications of how it would necessarily change the agricultural belts, which would resolve the implications of conflict that happens inside of the Middle East, and specifically Indo-Pak. You've conceded this specific argumentation. You've also conceded winter grains are necessarily going to be key, which probably means that it's always going to be turning off in a world where warming is inevitable. It means that having no value to life to be able to resolve for the implications of violence, but also probably means there's no risk to having the affirmative being key in this context, which probably means there's no reason as to why you have to be able to evaluate over questions of structural violence.
Extend this fish trolling argument too.
Also extend fish trawling. That probably also means the only argument they have is that infrastructure could be able to change. However, there's always going to either one, make food wars inevitable because it can never be able to interact with the conversations of how warming conversations specifically happen inside of the status quo, or it just means they're always going to be creating more infrastructure around minority populations, which then turns the environmental populations argumentation, especially in a world where they don't change the ways in which China has their environmental policies, which probably means there's no solvency for the advantage one. Anything else? Advantage two. They have no game on arguments. They teach on advantage two. First, you just conceded the SQUO solves the ability to be able to resolve the implications of policy making inside of the worlds of the advantage two. You conceded humanitarian need would be able to resolve because the creation of new foods would be able to impact on the ability for small farms to be able to resolve. But you've also conceded the no solvency argument that says that even if that was true, that if we're all practicing the same agricultural practices, that means there's no incentive to be a small farm. It's always more incentivized to be a larger farm to be able to produce more, as to be able to keep up with the market, which probably means that there is no incentive. That means the affirmative cannot be able to create more small farms because it necessarily decreases the likelihood of them being there.
They also concede that Monsanto thumbs small farms.
Also, they just conceded that larger corporations like Monsanto and Bayer would be able to thump the smaller farms. Probably means there's also no reason to be that they could be able to resolve advantage two, which probably means there's no ability, there's no game on the app. But also, you've just conceded that it's going to replicate more structural violence against black people on the criticism. On the permutation, a couple of disadvantages. First, this is always going to be, the permutation is always going to be utilizing the affirmative to be able to make blackness added to an exacerbated laundry list of categorical imperatives that can never be able to be resolved in the context of the structural violences aren't happening. The two is the hijacking to set this, the exponent that this is the attempt to be able to capture and redirect our alt into tantamount to involving themselves with civil rights movements to be able to, for the interest of other Western elites to be able to resolve the implications of violence. Also, we need to be able to make the contextualization of how Western and non-Western violence happens. You have made arguments about how China is not a Western power, so it wouldn't replicate violence, but you've just conceded the Indian Ocean slave trade argument.
argument that happened at the same time as the triangular trade, not thousands of years ago, which means there is no way, no game to be able to say that there is not a difference between the ways in which that is able to perpetuate white forms of anti-blackness, which often means you're always going to be interrogating and understanding deviance in certain ways, which means you're never going to get access to the permutation of the trade. It's going to be white supremacy. Just had this attempt to be able to integrate blackness into localities, whiteness. This is the inclusion of understanding the other. This is how Chinese colonialism and expansionism has been able to bring Africa into the fold of the economic world, which probably means there's always going to be an eradication of the violence that happens because it's always going to colonize those bodies. The forced white ethics is that the reformist logic of the state is always going to fail because the only ethical command is for the end of modern politics. You've conceded that this is the only way to be able to understand the questions of nation building and policy making. The five is going to be the either-centered severance, which is an independent reason to be able to vote down Timor and censorship, which probably means there's no game on being able to resolve the implications of structural violence. This six is that any link game that we have on our disaster, the permutation. The seven is that there's always going to be a form of conditional ethics that can never be able to resolve the implications of violence because they're always going to be prioritizing systems of institutional ethics over questions of black lives, which is always going to fail the aid accessibility. This is the ways which are always going to control the behavior inside of this realm, to be able to have certain conversations over others, which is always going to prioritize certain knowledge productions over other, which is inherently deviant that happens at space, which always is going to scale up and create more violence. On the solvency specifically, the only argument that you have is just going to create new racism. However, you've conceded the negative action and attacking is always going to be key because backlash is inevitable. There is no way to be able to resolve. There is no way to be able to resolve for policymaking key because white people have access to resources. White people have always had access to resources. That doesn't stop the violence from happening even when black people don't revolt, which means that there is no difference between being able to resolve for that. We always conceded as try or die, so it doesn't even matter. Also, the only argument they have against solving the affirmative is that farms are able to resolve. However, you conceded a lot of arguments as to how small farms aren't going to be able to resolve the affirmative, which means that you have no game to be able to resolve that, especially if black people just don't have access to the small farms, which probably means there's no way to be able to resolve for that in a world where the economic policies or agricultural policies are going to be racist. Also, constant expansionism is the problem of the ways in which the affirmative is able to engage because it always replicates systemic violence, which probably means there's no way to be able to resolve. Also, you have just conceded that the end of the world is the only way to be able to resolve because it's either try or keep dying for the black body. The extinction is now, which means that there is no way to be able to resolve it at all, which means you just conceded that warming is inevitable, which means there's no value to life anyway, which means there's no way to be able to resolve it. Also, you just conceded the ways in which we understand permutation is always going to be bad because there's no reason to be able to risk the affirmative. Also, you didn't give us a reason as to why fiat was necessarily bad. You just said we shouldn't use it. That's not a reason as to why we can't have access. Framework. External arguments about how this happens at the exact same time as the triangular trade. Also, you can accept backlash is inevitable. It means there's no way to be able to resolve the implications of the framework of the affirmative, but you've also just conceded the nation-building arguments in colonialism using we outweigh and frame the ability to be able to understand conversations of the affirmative. On the link level, you've conceded you've conceded this system is only stable now because of the justifications of whiteness and global endemic regimes to be able to resolve that. You conceded the B argument of the one link that says that we're always going to be seeing the world as being should be saved, which is always going to be the ways in which they replicate violence and anti-blackness that are already status quo. There's no way to be able to resolve through policy making. You've already conceded that's not how it works to be able to resolve for small farms. It's not going to be able to resolve, which means you have 100% access to the second link. But also the third link, the only argument that you have is all power inevitable. However, that's not one is not inevitable when the world ends. But two, which is model minority understandings is always going to ignore the ways in which that the continuum on the impact level is always going to be replicating because it's always about whiteness in the center and everything else outside of it, which means there's no way to be able to resolve for that. But also, you just conceded the neoliberalism argument. You have made an argument about how it's about aid and productivity. However, yes, productivity is the problem because it understands labor markets in certain ways that colonizes bodies in other ways, which means they're always going to be replicating violence because you'll just move the labor production from the bodies in China to bodies in Africa, which means you're always replicating the deviance violence. The biological determinism doesn't matter because that would have already existed inside of the status quo, which means the securitization logic of the affirmative is always able to perpetuate and spill up to create more structural violence.
All right, the LMR will be on a new sheet or the criticism and then the apps, depending on how you flow it. I prefer it to be on the new sheet if y'all will listen to me. Okay. Is anybody not ready? You can conceptualize this debate through the link level. The first link I'd like to talk about is the neoliberal link. We indicate that the ways in which the affirmative is able to posit China saying that it will stabilize or create productive norms is always one that reinsubstantiates the idea that there is a productive or a correct way in which the world ought to be focused, but you've conceded parts of our analysis about the ways in which the alliance slavery created the labor and material structural conditions for anti-blackness to be able to explicate itself indicates that the affirmative is always an expansion of the ways in which whiteness is able to function. Now, you will try to go for arguments about how there was slavery before the Indian Ocean slavery, but you're conceding the warranted analysis that indicates it was the production of labor and the unique effectiveness of the Indian Ocean slavery that created structural anti-blackness indicates you do not resolve this link, but also you're just behind on the stabilization link. Your argument is that the world is stable in the status quo, which would indicate say that the AF is unnecessary because if the world is stable, extinction isn't coming, don't vote on the AF. But additionally, our argument is the presumption that the affirmative is necessary to sustain any form of a modern order vis-a-vis solving the impacts is one that always presumes that white civil society is salvageable and something that ought to be saved, which always comes at the expense of the black body in a world which we're in any game of our impact levels indicates that you definitely link to the criticism. Now, the overview to the link turn debate. To win a link turn, you have to be able to win that the affirmative does a substantive action that is also preferable. Indicates that if we win any risk of terminal defense on the AF, you do not evaluate the link turn debate. You do not evaluate the link turn debate. But additionally, you haven't really read a link turn. Rather, you've read the arguments why neoliberalism might be good, which is parallel at best. Indicates you're not resolving any of these arguments. So you might go hard. You're now on deviance. You might be going hard for this argument how disableism is the all cause, but you have misunderstood.
Can't answer disableism. Figure drop that.
I'm doing impact weighing. I'm going to extend the argument we make in the LOC about how deviance creates whiteness as an ontological category. Figure extends the securitization argument. I'm in the process of explaining why all causes don't matter because of how we read our impact. So maybe point of order after I make the argument, and then we'll try again? Or panel? We'll see. You can see the ace point of deviance that indicates that whiteness is always trying to securitize itself against other things which creates a continuum. But we've indicated that whiteness is ontologically stable, which means it doesn't matter whether or not there are other things that are viewed as deviance vis-a-vis disableism, because we were just indicating this question of whiteness ability to deposit itself indicates that securitization still happens. But even if deviance is a root cause, the alternative would still solve because it's a possibility to be stabilist in a world, because it's not in a world. In a world in which the alternatives happen, there is no disableism because we're all gone. The alternative.
I think the argument that the alt solves disableism or like that contextualization is definitely no.
It's a contextualization of how solvency means literally the end of the world, which means that post-alt, there is no way to have this happen because there is no world. This is a contextualization that is made because of extended solvency. But, yeah.
But on the alternative, even if you're not by our impact arguments, Victor does a very good job explaining the ways in which gratuitous violence is happening as the black body in the status quo, which means even if there's a risk of an all cause of disableism, you're still going to prefer the alternative because the alternative is the only way that's able to resolve instances of gratuitous anti-blackness indicates we're still able to solve an impact. Now on the alternative itself, the only disadvantage to the alternative is the indication that violence is bad, but you've read no argument that indicates that there's a way to stop violence against the black body. In fact, you have conceded that violence against the black body is terminally non-unique, which means that this argument coalesces to violence against white people is bad indicates it's not a disadvantage to the alternative because the alternative is trying to enact violence against white people. Now you will go for the permutation, but I think Figure does an excellent job reading 9 reasons why the permutation fails. But even if you don't buy every single independent disadvantage of the permutation, you still have to win that there's a reason to prefer the affirmative, which means that first you have to indicate you have to win a reason that the world ought to be salvaged, which you are not doing, but also you have to indicate that there's a unique reason to prefer the affirmative, e.g. there's an impact to the AF which you have not done, indicates that the alternative is able to solve, but also you can see the argument that the alternative is able to solve the root cause of 100% of the impacts of the affirmative. You indicate it doesn't solve the affirmative, and like, it doesn't literally, it doesn't create biogas digestions, but it's very hard for warming to happen in a world in which everyone is dead, which means we resolve the internal link to the violence that's happening in the AF vis-a-vis the alternative. Advantage one. You have conceded the fish trawling analysis that indicates that global fish stocks are going to collapse by 2022, which indicates that the entirety of Advantage 2 is not unique, but also you're not able to solve warming because the collapse of fish stocks would directly implicate ocean acidification. This indicates that this indicates you have no offense who are able to go for an Advantage 1 or Advantage 2, but additionally on Advantage 1, you've mishandled the equal limits argument. Our argument is not that there's a trade-off between energy production and agricultural production in China. It's just that there are too many people in China, indicates that it's already past the equal limits, indicates the affirmative is not able to functionally solve, but additionally we'd also indicate, that probably indicates you're not able to solve Advantage 1, or at least not fast enough to be able to resolve the fish trawling impact, indicates you're not able to resolve any of these arguments. But on Advantage 2, you can see that Monsanto terminally thumps the affirmative, e.g. small farms always gets collapsed, small farms always gets collapsed and folded into greater corporations, which means all of the link terms you are going for on the criticism that are dependent on the creation of small farms are necessarily not resolved, but it also means you're not able to solve your minority farmers impact, indicates that's a new link to the criticism.
affirmative. And then the alternative framework blank syntax. Everybody good? It's going to be an easy vote for the affirmative to pass the plan and allow biogas digesters to be able to supply multiple individuals in China with fuel, especially individuals who are literally minorities. I want you to go ahead and extend all the arguments on case on the solvency specifically. Really, we only need this. Look, biogas digesters are being used right now in Bangbu. It's meeting 1/3 of the energy needs that they have there. All of their arguments don't matter where they're talking about like these other like structural colonialism and stuff, because we're going to get to all of that on the affirmative. None of these are reasons that the biogas digesters uniquely do not work. I want you to extend all of our arguments about how these will produce energy and fertilizer, which both gives individuals money and checks back against pollution. Extend our specific argument on the uniqueness, where we have Ren from Paxing saying that manure is piled up like mountains in front of their home. This solves back. Extend all of their arguments about how minorities are uniquely impacted by environmental degradation in China. This is going to be a unique reason as to why we either get access to the permutation debate or why you never vote for the alternative, because it's a bad idea, because it concedes that individuals are living in poor conditions right now. And you just say, oh, well, the world's ending anyways. Go to advantage 1. Extend all of their analysis about how global warming is inevitable. This is ultimately going to mean that it's an easy ballot for the affirmative, because we are the only ones that have an ability to try to get rid of the violence that is occurring in the status quo. We say that reducing the amount of emissions that are happening right now is always going to be critical. Also, I want you to extend Dominic's argument about how we uniquely create a war between the United States and China. This is always going to be good, because you tell us that white, Western, hegemonic nations are the problem. This means that ultimately we get rid of the United States, which is going to be critical to collapsing the impacts of anti-blackness in the interim. And since you can see, the alternative is never going to be able to actually solve, because just like the Black Panthers, you literally get shot up by the FBI. That means that you're going to be proving the solvency of the affirmative, because that is the only way we can actually collapse the war, because we have an impact that literally says that there's going to be 2 hegemons having great power wars at the point in time when you concede that we get fiat. This is literally a more preferable end of the world, because you endorse using violence and you concede like 3 different turns about how you target Chinese individuals, because you say that they're the model minority and you equate China to being a Western white hegemonic power. Let's go to advantage 2 on small farms. We're not going to be going for any of this offense here. All they say is that the United Nations is critical to food aid. I want you to go ahead and extend this as an analysis as to why they're showing that. Again, they are relying on white Western nations as the ability to solve the totality of the problem, and their analysis is entirely coming from a point of Westernism. Let's go to the alternative now. I want you to go ahead and extend Dominic's analysis to the disadvantage of nihilism. You ultimately agree to dehumanization. They say that the world is ending anyways. We say that that isn't the point. Even if the world is ending, we should not have a spirit of nihilism, because it leads to dehumanization, because it means that individuals do not value their own lives. This is a terminal disadvantage to the alternative that you completely concede. I also want you to extend the analysis that you justify killing Chinese populations. You say white supremacy is always what happens, and you try to use the timeline of when the Atlantic trade slave started and all that. None of the timeline matters. The issue is that Chinese people were originally not enslaving Black individuals. Proves it's not a question of race. It is simply a question of power dynamics that we tell you are inherent from 2 different places. First argument that you concede is religiosity actually leads to these differences. That was conceded on the case as well as on the alternative. The second one that you concede is that disableism is the root cause of these violences. Again, means that you're voting for the affirmative, because you ultimately say that the only root cause is anti-Blackness, and that we're apparently going to be destroying the end of the world violently to do so. What does that mean? It means every single individual, all the other minorities that are currently oppressed in the structures of whiteness, ultimately become killed violently by your alternative, or the alternative doesn't work. They literally concede. The Black Panthers were your alternative. They tried to violently revolt against the government. The FBI went into their houses while they were sleeping at night and shot them. The alternative doesn't function. The affirmative creates a great power war that takes down the United States, which is the largest Western white hegemon that has ever existed, which you concede. Anything else you want on the alt? Go to the link arguments. I only want one argument here. It's ultimately that you ignore the model minority violence. They go for all these arguments about productivity and that being the root of colonialism and all these arguments. None of this is going to matter, where you can see that we have 2 root consequences that we are going to be independently being able to resolve. The only question is whether or not you paint China out to be a Western hegemonic nation, which we would say you do, because you equate the treat slave to white supremacy and say that that happened in China as a root cause. This is again going to mean that you have the root cause wrong. You create a violent revolution and you blame the wrong individuals. You blame people that are not white, which could be individuals that are from Latin America, from China, from any other population. They all die in a world of the alternative. In the world of the affirmative, none of that happens. People get access to fuel. Well, apparently global warming is happening, which resolves their suffering in the interim, and then we create a big power war, and the United States collapses, solves back for like every impact on the criticism.